You're watching highlights of the Hudson City Council meeting on August 10th, 2026.
I don't have to remind everybody about how important this whole Clinton Crossing piece is. Lots of, what has it been, 10, 11, 12 years of trying to get this across the finish line. So we really acknowledge the importance of this, the importance of us working together to move the concept plan, advancing that for approval, getting some more kind of specificities around what is Clinton Crossing going to look like. There has been some interest discussed about plan development process and how that kind of structure, that ordinance, how plan developments are defined in our code is not, or needs some work. And so that will certainly, if we identify that Clinton Crossing might benefit from, or even has a chance of needing or benefiting from a plan development, then we want to make sure that that process of getting that work done to modify the PD is done as well and will be completed before we need it with regards to Clinton Crossing. Staff is going to work through the staff memo and the information that they've provided to us for tonight. We'll do one or two topics. We'll take a break. We'll go around the room. I'll do it clockwise so I don't forget anybody. And we'll ask for comments, questions, input, and we'll go around and round until people are satisfied that they have all their answers to the questions and they've been able to comment on everything.
I mean, this is a very exciting time and a very exciting project for Hudson, and having lived here since 2000, so seeing First in Main before it was a thing, and seeing the last piece of that puzzle being put together it's very weighty, as you say. The import is significant. One of the things I know that we have to work to protect is that sense of unity and collaboration between the two bodies. And so one of the things I feel like is important for us to maintain, and especially on social media, but also in our conversations with other people, is that sense of collaboration, so that when any uncivil or untoward or derogatory comments get made about the intentions of either body, that we are really covering each other's backs and not allowing those comments to stand, especially if they're false and unproven, but really going to bat for us, because we want to be your resource on what the laws are. We don't write the laws. That's your job. And there are laws that we have discovered problems with, and as you alluded to, President Byrd, the plan development process is skeletal at best. That's the kindest word I can use to describe not only the process, but also the guidelines that we have to apply. They are contradictory. I've gone on at length in a detailed spreadsheet about where the problems are, what the contents are, and that's really for everyone's edification.
We've been trying to go on a pretty steady and methodical process that we set back in May, and have really been pushing to hit these different benchmarks. But I think it's been beneficial to keep this on the community's radar, keep the community engaged, and also the city has an $11 million investment already in the site and is already incurring expenses. I think as we all know, we had 3 community charrette sessions in June where we had 120 plus residents break out into 17 small groups. They came up with 17 concept plans of how to implement the comprehensive plan for this site. And then July 1st, we had a community session with over 120 residents in attendance to view those 17 plans and provide feedback. Based on that feedback, on July 22nd, RDL revised that down to 3 plans which shared common themes of preferred uses and ideas. We had over 200 residents attend that session, which we're really pleased with that feedback, and 234 completed surveys. That information is now being refined into a preferred plan, which would be presented to the community August 22nd. There'd be another round of community feedback, and then we'd report that back to council on September 8th with the anticipation to get final feedback from council, or at least advance it to the point where we would formally place it to Planning Commission for the concept site plan agenda. We're targeting a public hearing for the fourth Monday of October at this point, and an orientation to the project at your regular September meeting.
So alignment with the comprehensive plan is very important in this project. It's been at the forefront of our planning process to date. So in the 2024 comprehensive plan, this was a specific focus area studied by that group. And you see the map. If you look at the image on the left, the bottom of page 1, that is the map that the comprehensive plan subcommittee group produced. And the recommendation was for a mix of residential uses and public, semi-public uses. So through the 2026 community engagement process, the boundaries were proposed to shift a bit as we further studied the site, identified the constraints, like primarily the wetlands. You can see those added on the second map. And so what we did was, working through that process, we shifted those areas, but we maintained the intended acreage from the original comp plan map. So still have the same split, north and south, of residential and public, semi-public uses. One is the plan's intent for housing to be generally compact, though should be compatible with existing residential neighborhoods and their historic character. Strong connections should be established, ensuring easy accessibility to downtown. So that was a goal of the plan. And additionally, the plan included an action item to progress development that supports existing downtown businesses by increasing foot traffic while maximizing vehicular traffic impacts, maintain the existing character and charm of a downtown. And it would be city-led. This process would be city-led, the conceptual review. And we feel that it will strengthen this community's voice into a formalized plan, give a future developer clarity regarding the community desires, and provide a more predictable process. So the intent is to align everybody through that process, PEC council, the community. The Planning Commission would vote on that conceptual plan. It is a public hearing, so the public would be able to come and provide comment on that. Essentially, plan developments are a good fit for larger projects, projects with mixed uses, varying lot sizes, mixed housing types, and potential development agreements. The plan development does allow for consolidation of applications, so it would be easier for the public to track. It allows for coordination between Planning Commission and City Council. So as staff, we do feel that the plan development review process may be the better fit for this project based on depending on the final site plan, concept site plan. As Dr. Bird mentioned, it would be beneficial to perform a code amendment in the coming months to have that align before a developer-led application is brought before the city. So throughout our public feedback, we've heard some concern on architectural design, concern that the development could appear cookie cutter. We want this to look organic. We want this to look lived in. So we looked at ways of how we can get that effect. And we studied different communities and projects that were considered exceptional design or special design. And a common thread we've seen from some of those communities is what's called an architectural pattern book. They've employed these guides, and what they're a collection of designs, templates, and instructions used to design buildings and site layout. So it employs variety and a unique character. We can make it whatever we want to make it, and we have some ideas on how to do that. So that's a process that we'd like to implement for Clinton Crossing. And whenever it goes to architectural review, we would consult that guide, and that would be the guide on the architecture of the project.
If you look at the comprehensive plan and the numbers, one of the questions was, hey, if you're going to move in the next 5 years, what are you going to be looking for? And the one that scored lowest is rental apartments. I think people think of Hudson as more of a residential, permanent place to live. And so I would just urge some caution when trying to push forward apartments or things like that. And then the other question I had was the co-working space that was proposed. Do you feel there's a strong need for that in Hudson? Would this be like flex space? Would this be where you rent it out? Would it be small businesses can rent a room and like what exactly is that vision? I feel like a lot of people are now moving back into the office. So I just don't want to have that built and have nobody and have it just sit there vacant.
Right, so on page 5, we were tracking some common themes from the public feedback. And at the top, we did state duplexes, quads, and apartments did not obtain appreciable support. So those were not on the higher end of requests from residents. We have been tracking that, as you noted.
But a brief note, the apartments were included in one of those 3 plans because they came up in multiple of the 17 plans that came from the 120 residents. But based on the tiers of engagement, as we've narrowed it down, it has not gotten sustained support. So it is not anticipated to be part of that preferred plan. And the co-working, we're glad to talk further about that. But we have had 2 private entities that have expressed interest in wanting to find co-working locations in town, that they would operate a co-working business. We do see that as being financially supportive and beneficial to the market hall concept.
It's just a way of visualizing the pieces that are possible so that people could vote on pieces. So they wanted to make sure at least one plan did have that so people could vote on it. So that's also why you saw one plan had a dog park and one plan had a nature center and one plan. So that all of the different pieces from the 17 were somewhere on those 3 plans, but each of those plans was not a separate final plan. The next step in this process is to see what people thought of those 3 plans to then further bring that down into one plan. So the final plan is not necessarily 1, 2, or 3.
Mr. President, the first conflict in our plan development language with the rest of the code comes up in whether or not the concept plan is required or voluntary. And I will stand to be corrected if it's the case. It is voluntary for most applicants, but in the case of the planned developments, I'm looking for my section number, 1203.04C1. It is mandatory for planned developments. So in case you wanted to back out, you can't. But we'll happily entertain your concept plan at the right time.
We've done research on how to connect it to the architectural design standards, and our standards do reference other publications and books, and this would be something we could develop and reference within the architectural design standards. Yes, we would develop that, and it would give guidelines on the design of the homes, particularly on the north side of the development, the architectural style, how often those styles can be repeated throughout the project, and we could go as far as to how they are laid on the site, where they're located on the site.
When you have a subdivision, typically what happens is they make their own pattern book, if you didn't know it. They don't build anything you want. They build one of 4 or 5 houses that they have pre-selected for this, partly because they can budget materials and expenses and work hours and those sorts of things for making that particular development. But yeah, that it's used frequently. It doesn't always get called a pattern book, though.
Should you be talking with people about this and about the 3 plans and the different uses? We have started to have some discussions that if anyone is very disappointed about a use that doesn't make it in, we have talked about where some of those uses might fit better than in this space. So I just want you all to be aware of that in case you're chatting with other people.
I believe that the comprehensive plan is most representative of what the community desires. And the fact that we had some interest in apartments, I think the comprehensive plan is the place to go to best assess what the community desires, because it was a full, complete, substantial participation by the community. And so I think it should weigh in heavily on, what we decide we think that the community desires.
And then we thought, well, maybe we should overlap them, because the developers is going to have insights and expertise that it's going to be hard for us to capture, like where to put the loading docks, or how to service a building. So then we thought about moving that up, and then we erred on the side, we feel like we're getting good community engagement and good community trust. Let's not start talking to developers. Let's make sure the community is fully comfortable. So we have not anticipated starting to talk to council until September 8th, when the community has kind of come together on that preferred plan. And it's still, I think, to be determined with council if that would be an RFP or an RFQ. So as an RFP, who can implement this for the highest dollar? Or as an RFQ, we want to find the most qualified developer and then negotiate with them. So that's, I think council's still got to engage on that in the month of September. As noted, two general paths we could follow would be some type of request for proposals, which was something that was talked about a fair bit a year ago to make sure that the city was able to recoup our investments, to determine a plan and then find the highest bidder to implement that plan. But then there's also the desire that we want a highly qualified developer, not just who might pay the most money for the land. So on an RFQ process, there might be a first step of determining the firm that's most qualified, and then council would negotiate with that firm the terms. We anticipate this project will continue to have tax incremental financing where the future property taxes help pay for the city's investment to date. So that will be a big piece of it in addition to the land sale, and if there's other negotiations on relocation and site prep, things of that nature. So all those things would be wrapped in as part of those developer engagement, developer discussion.
So was phase one conducted in this exact same process?
I believe First and Main was an RFQ type basis where we try to find a qualified developer and then negotiate a process. That is what was done with the phase two effort 8-10 years ago.
We did not. So it was done with a TIF, and the TIF did not cover the full cost. But I wasn't here then. They only did, I think, a 10-year TIF. This is set up to be a 20-year TIF, which double the time, more return. But when I got here, we were covering. So basically what ended up happening was they did First and Main. There was debt. They issued debt for it. Every year we would take the TIF money and pay off the debt. The money we got from the TIF did not cover the debt payment. We had to put money towards it.
At least the thinking at the moment is that it's probably one master developer. We anticipate the residential being a safe, predictable bet for a developer, and there's probably more uncertainty in the non-residential uses. And by putting them together, it will probably make the project more successful. They may very well partner with a specialty residential builder, but that's our thinking to date. And we have Bricker, Graydon, Wyatt is our financial consultant that's running TIF Performas, Project Performas. We also have Panzica Construction engaged as a contractor to help as a owner's representative and giving us some insight to the developer side of the equation.
They won't bid on this project, so that they're not going to get involved in bidding. We had to watch. Nobody who is potentially interested in this project is going to, represent us from an owner's side when they're interested in the project. So we knew they wouldn't be. They actually were part of phase two the first time around, helped with that part.
I think it should, because that's a tricky thing. What are qualifications? There's plenty of developers that are qualified, but I would strongly encourage to get the best interest, the best selection, a conceptual design be part of that process to see how their design matches up with what we would like.
Yep, good point.
Let them show us how they're going to serve the community, and let them compete on balancing cost versus comprehensive plan versus what we would like to see.
That's a good point, and that is part of a common piece of our RFQs and RFPs of some sort of rating matrix would be set up, and common ones include things like understanding of the project, demonstration of implementation, success on unrelated projects, expertise of key personnel. So there'd be some sort of matrix established for those.
Back to the TIF conversation, are we able to get the statistics and the dollars from the first phase to know what that loss was to the city so that we can relate this project to what we should be expecting? Does that make sense? Meaning,
Yes.
I know it's a totally different project. COVID changed the cost of all of construction, all of those things. I get that. But if the goal is to get the money back and the investment that the city and taxpayers have made, is that attainable? And can we look at that old data and get some assessment and feedback to know if that's even possible?
So is that us, or is that's where we're at a really hard point to know who's on, because who's going to do is the developer going to do the infrastructure, or are they going to pay us money for the land and we'll put the infrastructure in? That's what I mean when we have, the TIF is one function to help get the money back. There's also potentially the land sale. Yeah, we should have, when we get to, Emily, if I speak this better than me, but when we get to the final plan, Bricker should be able to tell us, here's where you stand. Is this a financially viable plan with, to some level of certainty? I mean, there's always, variables that you have to watch out for, but that's one of the reasons we have them, to tell us,
Great.
does this plan make sense? Is it financially feasible? But that was one of the things that we looked at here, was trying to stay away from things like that in phase. If we could stay away from a parking deck in phase 2, they're really expensive. They're really hard. So if we can just stay with street level parking, that's a big savings. And hopefully, I think maybe in the final plan, it ends up there where we don't need.
And I think that's what makes it so important to know where First and Main really landed as a reference point. I mean, especially for city council, and people know, hey, this came up this short. Look at our plan that we put together. We're going to hit 90%, 100% of what that cost is, unlike First and Main. I think it's a very important bit of information.
Understood the parking garage is an expensive maintenance animal, continuing to for the city staff. In these options that we have, part of the comprehensive plan was requesting some, updated traffic studies and things like that. Will we have any of that information before we do this development to know what those implications look like? How much traffic we're going to see back there? How much parking demand each one of these options is going to be?
We also have a parking consultant that is doing projections for this project and also doing a district-wide parking study, so we know if there's any deficiencies district-wide that we can address, plus to make sure this project doesn't negatively impact anything throughout the district.
I just wanted to add, too, for a comfort level, to a degree, that Panzica is currently the owner's representative looking at some of the market feasibility commentary, but there is a pretty comprehensive approach of several consultants on the finances, including Bricker Graydon, as Greg mentioned, looking not only at potential return on investment or pro formas, but also at potential structures that could improve the return on investment, like the specific TIF terms or specific district-focused assessments. And then RDL, our design firm, also has a cost estimator looking at this to further enhance the feasibility of their own work. And Silverlode Consultants is an economic impact firm that we've engaged previously and that we're currently re-engaging to add some additional high-level insight on market feasibility of several uses. So there is a complementary approach to a number of firms working on this, although they serve different uses.
I just want to add that there was also some initial traffic studies on the 3 separate plans that was available at the open house. I think, is it available online? Is that information available online?
Not at this time.
Okay, just curious.
It can definitely be added. Plan 3 was the highest ranked individually for the south or non-residential uses, and it included a boutique hotel estimated at about 48 rooms, as well as a 20,000 square foot market hall. And then Plan 2 included the grocery store and community center, as well as a history and nature center for non-residential. And its residential was probably the greatest mix of uses, including that the level of apartments based on some of the charrette input. But again, those ended up becoming the lowest rated. Some of the top hopes for the site were focused on adding community gathering spaces, increasing downtown foot traffic, and maintaining charm and green spaces. From a financial standpoint, we did survey people on their preference of the level of recovery desired, and the simple majority of respondents at 52% indicated that recovering the city's $11 million investment is either important or extremely important. So based on this combination of feedback, the current working draft that the design team is conceptualizing right now is expected to use the north side of Plan 1 and the south side of Plan 3 as the general foundation or blueprint, and make adjustments from there because those had the strongest preferences as a cohesive design. So the plan, again, to further on how it will change from those foundational pieces, it's currently in the works to be reduced to include just single-family homes and townhomes on the north. So it's losing the duplexes that were in that overall site use at the last engagement. And the south is expected to include a market hall with a reduced size to respond to some of those comments about charm and scale and the potential for oversized uses. So the market hall is reduced in size tentatively from 20 to 15,000 square feet.
And I think the preferred plan is matching what I'm hearing a lot in the community. And that is people want more housing in Hudson. People want wellness. I didn't understand the grocery store, why there was such a, or food. And then talking to residents, they explained to me, no, more healthy food, healthy options because we don't have drive-through or you have to go to the restaurant and wait, grab and go healthy food. And they seem to want that in a market hall, which was interesting direction. My concerns are with the workspace. I mean, I understand because you want to support the market hall, and I think it's great if you have some businesses that are already interested in that. I just think of all the vacant space we have in Hudson. As I'm driving, you know, I'm seeing office space after office space is vacant.
But I sat down looking at District 5, and that's where this is, and it doesn't matter that this would possibly be a planned district. It must include uses that are either permitted by right or permitted as conditional uses in the district. And market hall is not mentioned, nor is it defined. So I was very curious where the staff, where they're getting their ordinance authority for including a market hall in this.
Just a brief note on that item. It's quite possible that these final uses may require amendment to the code.
Absolutely. That's exactly the song I wanted you to sing for me, Greg, because we don't have a market hall in our zoning code. And that means you all have to be prepared to make that amendment. And then this district has to be amended, which of course staff will help you get that done. But the district has to be amended to allow it to be there. I agree that the residential is absolutely the best plan. I loved that. But what's disappointing is that by the time we got to this level of detail, I thought we might have references to the code that people would have said, oh my gosh, we can't have a 20,000 square foot market hall without a variance, or we can't have a community center because it doesn't exist in our code. And that's what was disappointing to me. So we're going to get into more detail.
The code should be a mechanism to give us our vision of the community and what we want to see. So for the residents are telling us this is something they want to see, I think we could be open to changing the code, as Greg mentioned, to allow something like that. So,
but my concern is that we would fast track the amendments that we want to get this project through, and the other amendments that are right now kind of languishing with no action on. I mean, we need to deal with density first, council. You all have to take action on density before we do this, and we can't fast track those amendments so that this comes through while everything else that's important for the rest of the city gets sidelined.
The densities would fit within the current framework of the zoning code. For reference, currently, single-family detached is allowed at 8 dwelling units per acre. Townhomes are allowed at 20 dwelling units per acre. I anticipate this project would not come close to those maximum thresholds.
These are not insurmountable.
Right.
And I think they can, once we get aligned on them, we can move them fairly quickly.
I think there is an appetite to do something, to come together and do something.
I think it's, as Dr. Bird said, there was a question from legal, and I think we haven't had a meeting in 2 weeks, but there had been some desire to send that back with some suggestions, was my understanding. But can't do that now, but it's some transparency for you. Otherwise, I very much enjoy just watching the process take place, and I absolutely believe that the resident input and creation of the design should then in turn inform our decisions to amend the code to be what the people want. I don't want to be confined by what the code may be today when we can change it to fit what the public wants. That's all.
So the flip side, I do think Clinton Crossing is really important. I do think the density is also important, but I don't want to, prioritize all this time spent to make sure that we're going back to the density and maybe focusing on Clinton Crossing just because it's in the forefront. So, we're hearing from residents what their priorities are. And as Ms. Smith said, right, we hear from residents, they want something done here, right? And they want it to be their based on their feedback and what they want in this space. This is what we are hearing is a priority for our community right now, right? So this is kind of on our priority list. This is high on our priority list because that's what we're hearing is a priority for our community. In terms of the code, I agree with what Mr. Brezovic said, and we don't want to do the cart before the horse, right? I don't want to put a bunch of code changes before you that don't apply, right? So if take the dog park, for example, I don't want to put a code change that allows a dog park if it's not in the final plan, right? Why have 20 different code changes that are never going to happen in the plan by the time we whittled it down?
And then my second, what I've heard back from residents is they're afraid we're not going to make a decision, that this has been ongoing for so long. And we've got to make a decision, and we also have to know we're going to have some people angry. But, that's what leaders do. You make a decision that you think is the best for the whole community.
I just want to reiterate, the comprehensive plan does best represent what the community wants. And I don't know how we would possibly square with however you're suggesting that the community wants something different than what they just said in a comprehensive plan. I don't know how that...
And I do take to heart what Dr. Getz says, is I feel gun shy here. This is iteration, I think, 3 that I've lived through. I might not have paid attention to the first one. And so there is concern that but I hear what your point is. We can't look at a limited size charrette or public engagement with ice cream cones or what have you and supplant what went into the comprehensive plan.
And that as leaders, we have to go with what we think the majority of the community wants, but also sometimes what we think is best overall for the community. Everybody might want a parking garage, but that's not really the best thing for the community in terms of cost.
We want to see this through. We know that staff is going to put an excellent application together for us. We know that, but changes are going to have to be made. Tell us how you want us to guide that through.
If you hand us a plan development and we have not made changes to the plan development chapter, I am probably going to refuse to approve it because I'm afraid that if I do, I will put the city in jeopardy because our guidelines, I don't feel like I have a comfortable leg to stand on presently. I want to approve this, but I don't want to put my city at risk of expensive litigation. So that's why our collaboration is so key. So Jesse's right. I don't tell you about all of these problems because I don't like the project. I tell you that if you send me this project right now, I'm going to be asking where the variances are. I'm going to be conditioning things on getting conditional use permits. There are going to be processes that will be engaged because of the way the law is right now. It's the red flag for you, and nothing more.
So I think at the beginning and don't misunderstand us, but the expectation is that if we go down the plan development path, it will be fixed.
Right. No, you
before
said
we
that,
go
yeah.
down the plan
Yeah,
development
I heard
path.
you, I did hear you say that. Thank you.
So yeah, and I don't think any of us saw your pointing out the challenges as not supporting the project. You were pointing out the challenges that we will tackle and deal with.
Thank you for that, Jesse. I think that was well said. On plan developments, then, while we're here, I think there's, at least in my view, a misunderstanding. You say there's problems with plan development and you need direction. I'm sitting here feeling like, okay, please bring us what's the fix for plan developments, and you're saying you need direction from us. What direction do you need from us sitting here right now to tackle the problems with plan developments?
Well, I think that's what our subcommittee has started to get material to you. Part of what we discussed just last week was this meeting, right? And what we can do, getting some feedback from legal as well as the things that need to be changed and how we do them so that can be presented to you very soon.
And where we left off, remind me, Nick, I think the ball is in your court, but if it's not, tell me. I'm going to try and do this by memory. Okay?
Go for it.
we decided that what we needed to recommend to council was to limit planned developments to about 5 specific districts. The first thing we were going to do was to redraft the purpose statement to give it some more, to amplify it for our understanding, so that when we are implementing that chapter, we can point to the purpose statement, which we're required to implement across the land development code for applications that come into us. So if there's a purpose statement, we have to read it and we need to, abide by it and fulfill it, and to amplify that purpose statement. And then the third part was that if we can get those 2 things through council, then we will work on developing those guidelines, and we may end up with, I think we said we might end up needing 3 sets of plan development guidelines, because we allow plan developments on as little as 2 acres, as large as 5 acres, that's a mid-size, and then as big as 50 acres in D11. Those are 3 very different project sizes.
So I think
Yes.
the subcommittee in Planning Commission was looking for just direction from council that they're able to look at and review that section. So it also came up in the subcommittee that council could potentially put a moratorium on planned developments now and give them, it would kind of not require that step of more amendments leading up to the big amendment. It would, and we're not anticipating any planned development
Except our
reviews
own.
in the coming months. We've only done one of these, so that could be an option. A moratorium is established, and then the subcommittee can continue the work, and the staff can bridge the 2 boards and give you your resources to be able to complete that work.
Right.
For me personally, I'm not looking for a perfect plan development code, that was already used for First and Main before we get to Clinton Crossing. I'm not looking for a perfect plan development code for District 11 for Clinton Crossing, right? So if you're thinking about how I'm prioritizing this, right, and when we're talking about all the different parts of the city, what I am prioritizing right now is Clinton Crossing, right? I want to get something the community likes. I want to be able to get it to you all to look at a concept plan. I want you all to be able to review it, to have those public hearings. I want to try and match the timeline that we've come up with so that the community can see that we're continuing to engage with them and they continue to see movement moving forward, right? So for me, if it was we want to debate over District 11's plan development for the next 8 months before we get back to Clinton Crossing, that's not okay with me personally, right? This is how I'm prioritizing this right now. Because it'll take time for an RFQ or an RFP, whatever we go with. You can't just do it. You can't have it with it. You have to have certain time periods. So all of this, by the time you actually, so you would see a concept plan potentially before then, I think. By the time you saw beyond a concept plan and something using a plan development, I think would not be till next year, right, is what we had the ish.
I anticipate a developer might be ready to formally apply to the city next summer.
Do we have any legal issues looking at a conceptual plan and then changing plan development code that doesn't create any sort of issues? I know once the application is there, they write.
It's not a
We looked at
vested.
that briefly. We don't anticipate that, but that's something that
Okay.
we'll look at further before that formal application.
The concept plan should not be a vested right. Didn't we discuss that? Nick?
I like the idea of, on Dr. Weinstein's point there, of, bring us that initial limitation of district and purpose statement, so we can get rolling on that 20 acres. So that mid-size plan development, focus on that one because that's the Clinton Crossing one, right? And so we can prioritize that way. And then the second piece, obviously, being all those points you brought up about the conditional uses and the variances. I think this council will be ready to move quickly on any required changes to the code. You guys will have to do that work, obviously, once we have the concept plan and you know where to hone in on. But there's not really any direction we can give you on that right now. So I hope that's some amount of direction for you on plan development, and we're not stalling you or holding you up in any way on that anymore.
I just want to say, I think it's exciting that we're finding all these challenges here, because if you find them up front, then we will have an incredible plan and an incredible place. So I do think that this is a really great working relationship going on.
Same. We see the density, the housing density that we see in these proposed plans fits with the current code. So in terms of prioritizing, for me, I personally wouldn't suggest you spend a ton of time talking about density in other districts when this is a priority and the housing already fits with the current the density and the densities you're thinking about anyway, if that makes sense, right? So I'm not saying don't do it. What I'm saying is how I'm thinking about prioritizing things.
We already did it. That
Yeah.
ball's in your court.
Yeah.
It's not, we don't have anything left to do on it until you act.
Maybe just for one brief orientation on a very general level, the preferred plan is looking to target about 65 housing units across 17 acres, gross density of about four units per acre. So about half of what the max code is on single family. Now it's got to convert to net density, so that may go up a touch, but it gives us a framework.
When it appears that we're in unison on the concept site plan review and the city advancing that effort. So that goes back to that timeline on the previous page, but we can adjust those as necessary. But we wanted to hear your collective thoughts on the initial step of advancing the concept site plan review. And then as we just talked about advancing the LDC amendments relevant to the plan development process, it appears council's direction was for the subcommittee to bring those initial recommendations to council to get that in motion. So I think those are just two jumping off points that if we can have a final direction on that, leaving this meeting, then we'd be in good shape. Some head nods.
I think the concept plan is a good idea because I think, at least what I've seen, and I'm new, I've only been on planning commission a year, but I see that developers or people, when they bring concept plans, they learn a lot. And I think planning commission learns a lot, and it really helps save time and reframe direction. And I think that would be really positive. I think the community wants this after all these meetings. So I think that would be great. I remember when I first moved to Hudson, and my husband, I was like, "What is this?" And he's like, "This is the old bus lot." I'm like, "What are they doing?" He's like, "You need to read about it in the paper." So I think it's exciting. I think it's an opportunity for all of us to come together. So that would be good.
No, we'll continue to develop the idea of the pattern book, and we'll provide more information on that. But it seemed like that both boards were interested in pursuing that, and then we'll work on those timelines further in the coming months.
I just briefly appreciate everybody taking the time for another night meeting. It's very helpful for staff to get feedback from both council and from planning commission, and this will help us as we're engaging the community August 22nd and working towards presentations to both of you in the coming months.
That the planning commission makes a recommendation to council, and that recommendation is not final or binding, and so no one has a right of appeal on it. Council makes a decision, which, did we say was legislative, or is that what we're figuring out? That's what we're figuring out, because if it's a legislative decision, it can't be appealed. It's subject to referendum. So that would be a final appealable administrative order from the planning commission that would be appealed, if they didn't like the outcome, to you, which you just sent it to us, but that's okay. The appeal would go to you, and then the appeal would go to the Court of Common Pleas if they were unhappy with your decision. This is really messy. And that's one of the things, Mr. Brezovic, that we will absolutely clean up as soon as Mr. Thomas gives us the report on what way to do it. And I happened to notice, just as I was doing my homework tonight, just to keep it even more complicated, when we enter into a development agreement, that's a legislative act too. That was with the city. You all approved that. And that legislative act is potentially subject to referendum, as opposed to being an administrative decision that goes through an appeals process.
This has been great. I really appreciate hearing your perspective and the challenges that you all will face, and the ones that we all will face. And I'm really encouraged that like some of you've all said, we want to make this happen. You guys want to make this happen. We're going to get it done, come heck or high water, and we're going to work through this, and it's encouraging. So thank you very much. I would like to adjourn the City Council special meeting, and we're adjourned at 21:02.
That's a wrap on this Clinton Crossing deep dive. Tonight you saw how the council and the commission are lining up a community-driven concept plan, fixing the plan development rules, and even exploring a pattern book so the project doesn't feel cookie-cutter. Keep an eye on upcoming meetings and our future highlight reels to see how the concept plan, code changes, and community feedback all come together.